Hey there guys, how's it going, and welcome to a brand new video where I'll be looking at my top 5 PvP base locations on the island for low level tribes or either possibly solo players who are a little bit further up the leveling system. Probably players around level 25 and downwards. Maybe you could hold these positions a little bit longer, but some of the positions aren't really suitable for tribes that want to get to the end game kind of stuff in Ark and a lot of the bigger dinos. These places aren't going to be easy to defend against raids. The whole point of these places is that they are hidden. So each of these locations is going to have each of these criteria, some better than other. So these ones are going to have a low number of aggressive dinos in the local area, so it's going to be easy for you to stay alive and farm in peace, or you've still got low level gear and you've got a low level character. It's also going to be an area where it's relatively easy to get to from a simple or an easy spawn point, for instance the south zones and so on. So you're not going to be seeing any areas here that are going to be north zone and things like that, the cold and the harder to stay alive places. These are all going to be places where you can spawn close relatively easily and then get to these positions. Also, they're going to be places where you have easy access to all the materials you're going to need at that early level. They're also going to be hidden, so all of these places are going to be places where you're going to be trying to stay hidden from the big tribes on the server, though I have to admit these locations are probably best for new servers. You might be able to get away with hiding in some of these in official, although I'm sure a lot of these have been built on, but you can always try out and see. Great places either way for a little hidden base. And then finally, they're going to be near some kind of metal spawn. You're going to need a little bit of metal if you're going to start progressing and taking your base to the next level. And at each of these places there is a decent enough metal to allow you and a small tribe or even solo to progress to the next stage. So if you'd like to see more videos like this, you'd like to see some ones on the center, you'd like to see some recommendations for base locations for larger tribes and tribes trying to get all the high-end stuff in the game, just show some love to this video, guys. Smash that like button, and I can see by support that you like that kind of thing. So before we go into each of the locations, at this first location I'm going to show you a PvP base which you could build relatively quickly and relatively easily, which would be quite hard for people to raid if they're at low level. For instance, they don't have C4 and explosives in terms of rockets. Maybe they've got grenades, but they've got nothing too high end other than that. Don't get me wrong, this build is going to get absolutely smashed by anyone who's a high level, but we're hoping at this stage everyone is going to be low level, or you can stay hidden enough so those big alpha tribes and the big developed tribes don't find you. So this base you're seeing in front of you here was just a simple 2x3 foundation design, and then I did a little bit of a pyramid out one to give us a little bit more of a barrier against grenades and so on. So we've actually got 4 walls in between the outside of this base and the inside. Also, we've got ramps on the side. Wooden ramps, obviously not great protection. However, when people are trying to throw grenades at your ramps, they tend to find that they bounce off a little bit. It makes it a little bit more difficult if there's some ramps there, unless it was just flat. If it's just flat, you can very easily just roll a grenade right up to foundation. With some simple wooden ramps even, it makes it just a little bit more difficult. On the top, instead of another layer with extra walls and extra ceilings, I've just gone for some sloped roofs to add a little bit of extra protection to the top, although the weakest areas of this base here are probably the top and obviously the front door. If you're going to take this seriously and you want to build this quick starter base, maybe even start off doing this out of wood, although I have to say you can level very quickly these days on official servers with 1.5 times weekend. You should probably be getting stone on the first day, but you could do it out of wood and then obviously upgrade it to stone as you go. So you go in the front door and I've got my 2 tames there. You can fit a couple of low level tames in there, possibly a parasaur. You could have your berry gatherers on the outside. Of course, one thing I forgot to mention is do not knock down the trees in your local area. Very, very important for you to stay hidden in the area. So we go inside and this is a 2x2 area. And as you can see, I've managed to get a lot in this 2x2 by utilizing wooden catwalks. We've got 4 mortar and pestles there, which obviously are useful for spark powder, gunpowder and narcotic, but they can also be used as extra storage. Not bad. A very, very small amount of room that they take up, and you can throw anything you want in there. We've got 3 forges, two preserving bins there, although you probably only need one. We've got the smithy and a couple of large storage boxes. So this really is all that you need at the early stages to get yourself up and running, start making yourself those metal tools and taking your tribe and your character to the next level. Now, around the outskirts of the base, in that kind of barrier layer, I have put some crop plots where you could grow your crops for making kibbles. Obviously, dodo kibble is something that people make very early on, and that is something that you can make there. In terms of water, you're going to have to get yourself some reservoirs to actually irrigate those, or of course you can manually irrigate your crop plots if that's not an option. I've also got some compost bins on the other side, and then behind the final wall I've just got one more crop plot, although you could throw your dodos in there or anything like that. So you can see here, just from this example, you can fit everything you want in this small space, and this small space is very difficult to raid for people who have grenades. So let's just take a little fly around, just showing you a better view. You can see there the sloped roofs at the top. We've also got double layering on every single one of these stone walls by using the fence foundation technique. I'm sure you're all aware of that by now, and I've thrown some plant species on there which would fend off any like kind of just chances, really. Like I say, anyone high level is going to be able to just smash this with their rocket launcher, but people who are just wandering around the beach are not really going to want to mess with this, and because it's quite hidden, people might just accidentally roll up on it, and they'll be thinking twice as they get pummeled with the plant species. Throwing some on the floor and whatever. You could also reinforce this area, as you can all of these locations, with a nice little bit of wooden spikes around the outside, then with a dino door stopping that. Just gives you a little bit more room to play with. Not super safe against raiders, but it's safe enough so that if you don't get found, you can manage to get on with things. And if people come with anything less than C4s and rocket launchers, and they just come with grenades, they're going to have a tough time. So I'm just going to throw some grenades at this base here just to give you an example of this. Is quite tricky to manage to blow in here. They would probably go for the front door, but I'm presuming a lot of you would be smart enough to reinforce that a little bit more. But just trying to get in through the sides here, if you're not very careful with your grenade placement and not everyone goes exactly where you want it to, you can see it can be kind of tricky to get in here. No matter what way you go through, you're going to have to get through at least 2 stone walls. Then you're going to have to get through at least 2 stone doors if you get lucky enough to find an area that has those doors as well. And I'm presuming at this stage you won't be keeping anything in this base which is going to be worth more than they would have used for explosive. I mean, in this base you should just have, you know, hide, a little bit of metal, some basic tools, so people using this many explosives on it aren't going to get anything back apart from annoying you, which is why of course we try and stay hidden a little bit as well, because it is annoying no matter what you've got in your base if it does get raided. So I'm going to take the Pteranodon here and just spin up a little bit so you can see where this area is. I haven't given you the location yet of this. We've just gone over the actual suggested build for a very small stone base. So this is just north of the Southern Isles. You can see very close to the southern spawns and just in this deep forest area, just slightly up from it. Now you could actually build this base in any area around this mountain, around the top of this mountain, although it's not really a mountain, it's more of a hill. But at the top of this hill and around this hill is plenty of metal for a small tribe or a solo player. See, I get my GPS out here, you can see roughly the coordinates. Anywhere that's hidden here under the trees that you can find a relatively flat area so you can fit that little 2x3 foundations or expand it a little bit more is ideal. But I would suggest where I've built here because it is nice and flat. It's right next to some ruins. It's right next to 2 explorer notes as well. Just a very decent location. So the first location, 80.6, 61.6. The next location is near an area you should all be familiar with. This is the South Mountain, absolutely covered with metal, a great area to be. However, I wouldn't recommend building just up in open view, up on the top, especially if it's a server that's already got quite a few tribes on. You're going to get found extremely easily, and these metal nodes are very highly contested. So I'm going to show you a little spot that I was using on an extinction series here. I managed to build here for at least 2 to 3 weeks without being found by the Alpha tribe. I actually joined an extinction server late and decided to build down here. So you can see we just went down the mountain a little bit on the north and then left a little bit, which is actually I think that would be west into these deep trees. And this is an amazing location. This is probably my favorite out of the 5, to be honest, guys. Look how flat it is in this area. Look how many trees there are covering you. For a hidden base location and a small tribe, this is extremely good. And I think you could actually even take this one to the next level and be hidden here for long enough that you might be able to get yourself a bigger tribe and actually expand from this spot. It's not absolutely ideal because you are quite far away from the higher metal spawn areas and from the really high level carnivores and stuff like that, but a very nice place indeed. So this one is at 72.7, 45.3. It's got everything you could need. It ticks all the boxes here. We've got a low number of dangerous dinos. We've got easy access to this area. When you're a fresh spawn, you've got easy access to all the materials you're going to need. You can build hidden here in the trees. Then of course there is an absolute ton of metal very nearby. Tame yourself a couple of parasaurs if you don't have the time for a trike. Take them up to that mountain, fill them full of metal, bring them back here. Within a couple of days you'll be able to have a nice metal setup and either stay here and move on somewhere else. On to the next location, and we are going to be looking at a place right next to what I call Evo Mountain. That's just something I've called it since Survival of the Fittest. I'm sure you guys have got your little names for all of the mountains, like the ones that don't really have proper names. Around 65-60 this is. It's a little bit more tricky to get to than those last 2 areas, but as you can see, if you go down the mountain, just down the peak of it I guess almost, and you head into this tree area, there is a lot of space around here to build. Like I've said previously, you've got to keep the trees up for at least a few days. I mean, most of you will only be planning to stay in these areas a few days, but if you knock the trees down, you completely lose the hidden aspect of the base. Here I'm just getting chased by a galley, so I've got to just drag this thing off the side, and that's a good example actually of how some of the dinos around here are a little bit more tricky. So this spot I would say is a good starter spot for people who are a bit more experienced. They're used to dealing with snakes and callies and parasaurs, things like that. If they get aggroed, and you can easily get away from them. People who know generally how to survive in the PvE environment will thrive here nice and early on. There's an absolute ton of metal, especially for a small tribe on the mountain next to you, and you also have the hidden bonus of a cave being directly beneath you. Not bad for only storing stuff or just seeing what's in the cave for drops, but also really great for getting a dung beetle early on, which is going to be amazing for fur production and being able to get you those plant species up nice and early, give you a little bit of defense as soon as possible. The next location I'm going to be showing you is just north of this mountain. This is one that you could probably get away with being a slightly larger tribe, so maybe this is a good place for you if you have a larger tribe but you're still just starting off. It's still the early days. The way we used to get to this spot on our extinction servers is we used to tame a frog, which you can tame quite early on and then get here as soon as possible, or you can just try and make your way on foot. You can get there eventually if you keep trying. Put yourself down a foundation and a bed and you'll be absolutely fine. Now it's not quite as hidden here, but it is a little bit harder to raid if you find people that are actually going to raid you. So this spot I would highly recommend on a fresh server, but I wouldn't really recommend if it's an already existing official servers where there's a lot of tribes really well built up around the map. If you can build here super early, as soon as the server opens, you can do very well, but like I just said, it's not as well hidden, so you are going to have a little bit more trouble if there are big tribes on the server that aren't friendly, that are going to take down any bases around here. But it's definitely safer. You're protected by a lot more dangerous carnivores. There's loads of snakes in this area and things like that, so you're going to want to be a bit more of an experienced player. Around 58 59 you can see here on the GPS, oh sorry, 58 59.8, so 58 59 roughly. And a great area. I just had a great time at this spot. There's so much cementing paste nearby. Once you tame a frog, you can go and do a little circle around the redwood and get a load of cementing paste, which is super useful for when you want to get yourself to the next level. So that is a great spot, but a bit more ambitious than the previous ones we looked at. So my final spot I'm going to be suggesting for early or starter tribes on the island is going to be right next to the southern cave. Now, the downside of this one is it's a very popular place for new people to build, and a lot of people actually do build at that cave. So again, I would say this is probably one you're only going to be able to do on a server that isn't already established. You might be able to get away with it on established servers, but you'll just have to have a little look around. I would actually recommend, as I'm doing here, going just north of it, because if you go south of it, you're very easily to be it's very easy for you to be able to be seen from people who are just running around that coast. But if you go to the north side here, although it's not quite as flat, it is more hidden, so you're having a little bit of a trade-off. So let me just spin up there, and you can see here there is dense forest, there is dense trees in this area, and that really revolves around the whole theme of all of these PvP bases. They're kind of like sneaky, hidden, early on ones you can get away with, maybe solo, but definitely in the early stages of any server. So perhaps if you can get yourself that Pteranodon, you're looking for a spot, or maybe a Pelagornis or something, you can find a nice hidden spot. You should be able to tell from the ground which parts are the most dense, but I'm just going to barrel down into this area, and you can see it is a very, very dense forest. I don't really see too many people walking around here, really. If you keep yourself to yourself, as with most of these spots, you should be able to stay away from the big alpha tribes. They're going to be going up to the volcano. They're going to be in the north. Sometimes you get them at Red Orb and a little bit in the south, but most of these spots I think will be useful for you. So here you can see we've got 7556 on the GPS. Anywhere in this general area is going to be absolutely fine. So I hope you guys enjoyed checking out these recommended places. I know a lot of you end up playing solo, even on official servers, so you wanted some hidden spots, you wanted some spots that you can manage on a schedule where you're not able to play that much, and I think these ones are really great, and they're going to suit people with that kind of play. So I just want to get on, see if they can get away with enjoying it for a few days, and then go from there. Like I said, if you did enjoy the video, don't forget to smash that like button, and that's it for now, guys. I'll see you next time.